Okay, let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're unpacking a massive geopolitical puzzle that has honestly challenged world leaders for generations. How do you actually demonstrate strength without allowing a conflict to snowball way beyond its original purpose? Drawing from a genuinely fascinating panel discussion featuring 5 of the world's leading strategic minds, we're going to explore that delicate, high-stakes balance between deterrence and escalation.
So here's our agenda for today. 1. Evaluating Iran's strategic leverage. 2. The choke point at the Strait of Hormuz. 3. Balancing power and diplomacy. 4. The risks of ground operations. And finally, 5. Predicting the path forward.
All right, Part 1. Evaluating Iran's strategic leverage.
So here's a really fascinating paradox. Did recent conflicts leave Iran stronger, or has their long-term position actually weakened? I mean, they clearly suffered serious military losses in recent regional clashes, taking heavy damage to assets and leadership. But our expert panel asks a somewhat counterintuitive question. Did taking those physical hits actually translate into a totally different kind of advantage?
Well, to figure that out, we've got to make a crucial distinction. Strategist Robert Pape hits the nail on the head here. He points out that military success and strategic leverage are absolutely not the same thing. You can literally lose physical military assets, but still gain bargaining power if global circumstances shift in your favor. It's like a giant puzzle. You don't necessarily have to win the battle to suddenly become a much bigger, more complicated variable in your opponent's calculations. And this brilliantly illustrates Professor John Mearsheimer's point. He notes that if major powers suddenly become way more cautious because they're terrified of the economic fallout of an escalation, Iran has gained something immensely valuable. Now, General David Petraeus does jump in with a caution here. He notes this kind of leverage might just be temporary as other nations adapt, but make no mistake, changing the constraints of major world powers is a very real, very potent form of influence.
Okay, moving right along to Part 2, Choke Point, Strait of Hormuz.
So, zooming out to the geography for a second, does Iran's ability to disrupt the Strait of Hormuz fundamentally change the balance of power? Geography has always been a primary source of leverage, and because this narrow waterway is the vital artery for global energy exports, a nation doesn't even need a massive world-class navy to trigger massive economic anxiety. Just having the ability to disrupt it gives a conventionally weaker country influence way beyond its actual military weight. Fareed Zakaria makes a crucial point on this. A prolonged disruption doesn't just hurt the United States, it hits all of these major global stakeholders: China, India, Japan, South Korea, the European Union. Because these economies desperately rely on stable energy supplies, a state of controlled uncertainty is actually more valuable to Iran than a total blockade. It literally keeps the whole world on edge.
The strategic calculation behind this is wild. As H.R. McMaster notes, actually closing the strait, that could completely backfire. It would likely unite neutral trading partners against Iran and just accelerate everyone's use of alternative pipelines. So the threat of disruption creates market panic and maintains their leverage, while actual closure destroys it entirely. It's a massive, high-stakes balancing act.
Which brings us nicely to Part 3, Balancing Power and Diplomacy.
This right here is the core dilemma facing American leadership. Can the administration successfully accomplish its goals while preventing a broader regional conflict? How do you project immense strength to prevent larger wars while fully recognizing that successful military operations can easily create a runaway chain reaction of escalation? The ultimate goal, of course, is to protect interests, defend navigation, and support allies, all without sparking a massive war.
What's really interesting is the absolute consensus from our panel that these two concepts are not opposites. Credible military strength is actually required to create viable diplomatic options. You need that military preparedness to enforce credibility, for sure, but you absolutely must pair it with diplomatic engagement to keep communications open and prevent catastrophic miscalculations.
To avoid the trap of continuous escalation, leaders have to constantly watch for these specific signs of stability. Are there open, quiet channels? Is allied messaging unified? Are military deployments limited? And most importantly, are objectives narrowly defined? If you see these signs, it usually means both sides are actually trying to serve their original political goals, rather than just blindly retaliating against one another.
Let's dive into Part 4, Risks of Ground Operations.
So, could a carefully limited ground operation strengthen security, or does it just create new risks? Look, the term ground troops gets thrown around constantly, but it is an extremely broad phrase. It covers everything from a quick, highly targeted rescue mission to a years-long occupation. General Petraeus points out that we need extreme precision when we talk about this.
A disciplined mission with a clear exit strategy is a totally different ballgame than a massive ground war. Petraeus notes that air and naval power are incredibly effective for things like surveillance and precision strikes, but they have definite limits. You can't permanently secure a site from the air. But on the flip side, Professor Pape issues a pretty stark warning. Deploying foreign troops on the ground, even in a limited capacity, can easily fuel extremist recruitment if the locals start perceiving them as permanent occupiers.
Ultimately, as Fareed Zakaria emphasizes, public debate often misses the full picture here. Responsible strategy means you have to weigh the severe dangers of military action, like mission creep and retaliation, directly against the equally severe dangers of inaction. Choosing not to act carries heavy consequences too, potentially emboldening adversaries and totally weakening your deterrence.
And that brings us to our final section, Part 5, Predicting the Path Forward.
So, taking all this geopolitical theory and economic reality into account, what actually happens next? When asked to forecast the next 6 months, the experts largely agree. We are definitely not likely to see immediate total peace, but we're also pretty unlikely to see unlimited all-out war. Instead, we are settling into a prolonged period of intense, highly calibrated pressure.
Synthesizing the panel's forecast gives us a really clear matrix. The most likely path is that prolonged pressure and gradual negotiation, mostly born out of sheer exhaustion. The signs of hope? They aren't going to be sweeping, historic peace treaties. We're talking narrow, verifiable agreements and quiet allied coordination. The major warning signs to watch out for are expanding objectives, basically when either side starts moving the goalposts after every confrontation.
As the source text concludes, navigating this level of uncertainty requires immense discipline. Rushing to declare a permanent victory or throwing in the towel and calling it an inevitable failure is just a mistake. Patient, informed dialogue and keeping those quiet channels open remain our absolute strongest tools.
I want to leave you with this provocative thought as you think about how these geopolitical gears affect all of us. Is a balance of credible strength and patient diplomacy actually achievable in today's Middle East? Because it's not really about choosing between military power and diplomacy. It's about whether world leaders have the incredible discipline to weave them together successfully. To explore this fascinating thought experiment further and read the incredible insights from this panel of experts, please visit the full conversation at https://imaginarytalks.com/Can America Prevent a Wider Middle East War? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and remember to keep questioning the world around you.